December 26, 2004, just past sunrise. Deep beneath the Indian Ocean, an earthquake erupts. At magnitude 9.1, it's one of the strongest ever recorded in the world.
We begin tonight with a massive disaster across large parts of Asia.
The quake produces a tsunami, which ravages coastal cities in the region. In Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, even stretching to the shorelines of Somalia.
Tiba-tiba tentara-tentara yang ada di penjagaan laut itu udah teriak-teriak, air laut naik, air laut naik, air laut naik gitu.
The disaster results in a staggering death toll, more than 230,000 across 14 countries. And in the Indonesian province of Aceh alone, closest to the quake's epicenter, 167,000 lost souls.
Kita berduka, kita menangis, dan hati kita menjerit, menyaksikan ribuan korban berkelimpangan dalam keadaan kaku.
You've seen it all on TV and in the pictures, but there's nothing the same as being there, talking to the people, seeing firsthand the devastation, the houses which have been knocked down, the towns which are just no longer there.
20 years on, survivors reflect on lasting scars and fates forever changed. The province of Aceh sits at the northern tip of the Indonesian island of Sumatra. Most live in the capital, Banda Aceh, on the coast. These are deadly shores. Delisa Fitri's childhood home lies by the sea on the outskirts of the city. In December 2004, she had just turned 8.
Tentu untuk ingatan itu tidak pernah hilang ya. Saat itu Delisa hari Minggu baru bangun tidur juga karena kan hari libur sekolah. Nah saat baru bangun itu posisinya Delisa bangun buka pintu melihat ibu Delisa lagi menjemur pakaian.
It's a normal lazy Sunday morning until it wasn't. Just before 8 a.m., the ground starts shaking violently.
Jadi pas gempa itu kan panik nih, mak gitu. Delisa nggak tahu itu apa. Ibu mama Delisa masuk, narik Delisa kita keluar dari lorong. Ketika kita keluar dari lorong itu banyak orang yang sudah berdiri, ada juga yang sudah duduk, ada yang panik juga mau lari tapi posisinya masih goyang gitu. Ibu bilang, di sini aja kita ya, di sini aja katanya gitu. Oke, kita tunggu di situ, nggak lama berhenti gempanya.
Delisa stays outside with neighbors as her mother checks on their home. Moments later, chaos strikes again. Out of nowhere, waves of water gush down the streets. The tsunami leaves behind a trail of destruction. Scientists are quick to discover its cause. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, two tectonic plates have converged. Rather than colliding into each other, the Indo-Australian plate subducts or dives beneath the Eurasian plate, and in the process, thrusts it upwards. It's a violent geological phenomenon known as a megathrust. Earthquakes caused by megathrusts often lead to tsunamis.
So the 2004 event was produced by the longest earthquake rupture in recorded history, extending over 1,500 kilometers. And a large portion of the megathrust broke near the trench and lifted the seafloor.
The earthquake raised the seafloor so significantly that in an instant it raises global sea levels by an estimated 0.1 of a millimeter. That caused more than 30 cubic kilometers of seawater to be displaced. As ripples from the deep ocean approach shallow coastal waters, they evolved into towering waves.
Bisa lihat tuh ke belakang, pas lihat itu naik tuh air tuh, set gitu gelombangnya. Itu hitam dan tanahnya bergetar juga. Itu udah posisi panik, lihat ke belakang sebentar, lihat ke depan, kakak Delisa udah terlindas. Itu rasanya airnya waktu pas kena gelombang itu kayak jatuh di aspal. Waktu itu nggak sadarkan diri, ibu juga nggak tahu di mana posisinya, saya juga nggak tahu jam berapa, bangun tuh dari air. Jadi pas bangun kaget, udah di dalam air, sentuh-sentuh juga nggak bisa, manggil, mak, nggak ada yang nyaut gitu kan ya. Jadi pas lihat di sebelah ada juga bayi yang kepalanya tuh udah kena apa gitu, jadi udah hampir putus gitu. Nah pas itu udah mulai ketakutan kan, manggil ibu gitu. Tangan posisinya nggak bisa angkat, karena nggak tahu apa yang kena di bawah gitu. Yang ada terasa kaki kiri Delisa itu ada kayak remukan gitu, mencekam lah kaki Delisa. Tapi itu nggak tahu apa, karena di dalam air.
Delisa is eventually brought to a hospital. It's in disarray, with electricity and water services interrupted. Medical supplies are also running low, and staff struggle to treat the thousands injured. Delisa's foot starts to rot.
Pak Didi nanya, Delisa maaf nih nak, dia bilang gitu. Kaki Delisa kan sakit, ini harus dipotong bahasanya kemarin, dipotong gitu. Terus Delisa bilang, nggak mau, dia bilang nanti nggak bisa main bola. Gimana ya nak, kakinya udah sakit, kalau begini nanti Delisa yang sakit, dia bilang. Terus Pak Didi mencoba meyakinkan Delisa dengan, oh nanti kalau Delisa mau potong kaki, Delisa sembuh, Bapak janji bawa Delisa ke Jakarta, cari ayah. Gitu, karena kan ayah di Jakarta. Karena beliau menyajikan hal tersebut, Delisa, oh ya, kita cari ayah, gitu.
Delisa's father, who'd been away in Jakarta, arrives in Aceh. He finds her leg already amputated.
Jadi Delisa nggak ada perawatan apapun, obat tidak ada, ganti perban tidak ada, infus tidak ada. Jadi sampai hari ke-8, tuh Delisa kaki udah gimana ya, rasanya nyeri gitu, bau, menyengat, duduk nggak bisa, apa-apa nggak bisa. Ayah bawa balik ke rumah sakit, dilihat ternyata kumannya udah naik, sudah mulai busuk, dan dilakukanlah operasi kedua untuk diamputasi kembali. Disampaikan oleh dokter itu, kebetulan yang kedua adalah Australia, Bapak saya kasih nampak kumannya sudah sampai mana, kalau Bapak tidak mau melakukan operasi lagi sampai dengan batas kuman itu terakhir, mungkin nanti seminggu kemudian kumannya naik ke jantung, katanya gitu. Jadi ya namanya seorang ayah ya waktu itu, potong aja sampai, yang penting di mana aja sampai, yang penting anak saya selamat gitu. Itu yang ayah sampaikan, akhirnya dipotong yang kedua. Mulailah kami tinggal di rumah sakit Kesdam selama beberapa waktu, hingga dibawa ke rumah sakit pengungsian dulu di Denmark, di samping Universitas Syakuala. Di sana juga dilakukan amputasi yang ketiga. Jadi Delisa terakhir dipotong adalah di pas di bawah lutut. Foto Delisa di tahun 2005 setelah amputasi yang ketiga. Ini tuh kami berada di poskonya Denmark. Itu Denmark yang membantu kami di samping Universitas Syakuala, Banda Aceh.
Delisa learns to walk, first using crutches, and eventually with a prosthetic leg.
Pertama Delisa itu perasaannya nggak mau pakai kaki palsu. Mungkin karena membayangkan yang pertama tadi ya, berat gitu segala macam. Terus yang uniknya dokternya Delisa tuh bilang gini, kamu tau nggak saya jalannya gimana? Karena dia normal banget mbak, dia normal banget jalannya semalaman jalan. Rupanya dia tunjukin kaki palsu juga dua-duanya, kakinya hilang karena kecelakaan. Dan dia masih bisa main bola setelah amputasi. Dia diamputasi itu di paha abis gitu dokternya. Gitu. Nah, karena hal tersebut jadi Delisa semangat. Oh, bisa nih, bisa kemana-mana. Dia tunjukin, ini saya bisa angkat ini saya bisa ini. Dia bilang gitu, ini saya bisa jalan gitu kan ya. Jadi semangat nih, oh ya mau ya gitu.
Delisa has triumphed over the challenges the disaster thrust upon her, thanks to the support of her community. But while the tsunami spared her life, she continues to carry the weight of its painful memory. In the immediate wake of the tsunami, a solitary structure stands amidst a flattened landscape. A lone mosque with white walls that are a stark contrast to the rubble and dirt of its surroundings. The image becomes an enduring symbol of defiance in the face of the tsunami's destructive wrath. Professor Nazli Ismail was studying in Sweden as he watched scenes of the tsunami's devastation on TV. He didn't recognize images of his hometown until he saw pictures of the lone mosque.
Ketika saya bangun subuh, saya putar TV, dan TV itu ngomong dalam bahasa Swedia, saya tidak paham apa artinya. Saya diskusi dengan istri saya katakan ini sepertinya tempat kita gitu. Tapi saya belum punya bayangan apa yang terjadi di tempat saya gitu.
Aceh was in the midst of a conflict, so some saw the tsunami as an act of God.
Per hari itu minimal 4 orang terbunuh di Aceh, siapa saja. Dari pihak mana, yang paling kita sayangkan adalah masyarakat biasa. Di sini Tuhan mau menunjukkan kekuasaannya. Kalau manusia bisa membunuh 4 orang dalam satu hari, Allah lebih banyak dari itu. Dalam sekejap, tidak perlu 1 hari. Hanya dalam hitungan detik, lebih dari itu. Mungkin ini semacam rasa kita perlu kembali ke hati nurani. Gitu.
Part of the mosque remains in disrepair, a memorial to the tragedy. Nazli knows the place well. It was a fixture of his youth.
Ini tangga yang tidak ada tidak ada dinding, dan saya tidak bisa.
Ada railingnya.
Iya. Jadi saya sama sekali nggak berani naik tangga-tangga seperti ini. Gitu. Apalagi dia tinggi sekali. Merasa kehilangan, belum pernah naik dan sudah tidak ada lagi sekarang. Gitu.
After completing his studies in geophysical engineering, Nazli returned home.
Saya melihat Banda Aceh yang betul-betul berbeda dengan Banda Aceh yang sebelumnya saya tinggalkan. Dari segi wajah, jadi saya melihat itu betul-betul berbeda. Artinya itu secara garis besar sebenarnya dalam arah yang positif. Jadi hal yang lebih bagus, lebih baik. Dulu sebelum saya meninggalkan Banda Aceh itu, saya merasa hidup tertekan dengan konflik. Juga termasuk ketika saya sedang kuliah, banyak trauma-trauma seperti itu. Saya masih seperti dikejar dengan trauma-trauma tersebut.
Nazli has become one of Aceh's leading experts in tsunami science.
Kita tahu sebagian besar masjid itu biasanya mereka punya dinding hanya tiang saja di bagian bawah, tidak ada dinding. Sehingga ketika datang air, masa air yang masuk ke dalam masjid dia tidak terbendung, tidak tertahan sehingga dia bisa keluar langsung seperti itu. Sehingga rata-rata masjid selamat dari ancaman tsunami. Jadi tidak mengherankan.
Many people, including Nazli, wondered why such a disaster had befallen Aceh. Scientists quickly realized that this was not the region's first encounter with a tsunami.
Hakikatnya manusia itu cepat sekali lupa mungkin ya. Kalau kita katakan masyarakat lupa, tapi sebenarnya saintis juga lupa gitu ya. Sehingga dilupakan. Barangkali pertama karena negara-negara yang ada di sepanjang Pasifik negara penting semua. Sedangkan negara yang ada di sepanjang Samudra Hindia ini negara-negara ketiga semua gitu ya. Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India gitu. Apalagi di pantai-pantai timur Afrika gitu ya. Jadi semua terabaikan barangkali secara saintifik dia terabaikan gitu.
Despite the lack of scientific records, historical texts on Aceh provide hints. Accounts of previous tsunamis can be found in a 17th century manuscript. The text, while not scientific, makes a prediction.
Manuskrip itu mengatakan jika gempa terjadi di waktu duha, maka air laut yang keras akan datang padanya. Artinya apa? Waktu duha adalah kira-kira sekitar pukul 8 sampai pukul 11 pagi. Dan kemudian ketika ada kalimat yang menyebutkan air keras akan datang padanya. Sebetulnya itu bisa diterjemahkan dalam konteks kekinian adalah tsunami. Tapi pengetahuan ini tidak tersambung pada generasi berikutnya. Karena mungkin banyak hal yang mempengaruhi. Kita tidak terlalu merawat ingatan kita tentang bencana.
Here, along the western coast of Aceh, lies a cave. In it, scientists believe they've found evidence that multiple tsunamis have struck these shores.
So part of our team is looking at the actual soils themselves to find evidence that this came from the sea.
In 2011, researchers from Indonesia and the Earth Observatory of Singapore teamed up to dig a hole.
Deeper, so I'm having two of the guys sort of chip it down a little deeper. We got some more tsunami sensors on top of it. To the left, down.
I collect quite a bit of charcoal from the top and shells from the bottom. I think I may leave it at that now. They can come in here and deepen it.
As they dug, a geological story emerged. These lines in the earth represent a historical snapshot, a moment in time. Thicker lines mean that a tsunami had washed into the cave, leaving behind a large amount of sediment. The sediment would compact over time. When another tsunami occurs, a new layer of sediment is deposited, resulting in another thick line.
Tsunami comes in, deposits cobbles and pebbles and sand. First the coarse stuff, then the finer stuff. And with it are all these broken shells from the sea.
Scientists were able to look back in time to find evidence of multiple tsunamis. They believe that about 11 prehistoric tsunamis have struck the coast over the last 8,000 years.
Tsunami, more stones, big stone. Another tsunami, big stone. This tsunami we know from radiocarbon dating. This tsunami is about 4,500 years ago. So this is before Achenese were here. Before my prophet also. Okay, and this clay is from the ocean. So back 5,000 years ago to about 7,000 years ago, the ocean was about 2 meters deeper. And here's another tsunami layer. And this is probably about 6,000 years ago. On top of another ocean clay. Tsunami layer. Okay. And then there's another one down here. And look at all the shells. See all these shells also coming in from the ocean. And the rock behind me from this tsunami, which is probably about 6,000 years ago.
Experts believe that these events are cyclical and that it's likely a tsunami will happen again. Despite the threat, many Acehnese have returned to their coastal communities after the tsunami of 2004, rebuilding their homes in high-risk areas.
Kami dari segi ini kampung pemukiman kami sini, semangat kami tidak pantang mundur. Karena apa? Kami di sini tengoklah suasana kami di kampung kami sudah berantakan diterjang badai tsunami yang agak lebih tinggi kan. Tapi semangat kami untuk pulang ke kampung kami ke sini kembali untuk membangkit semangat kami dan warga kami di kampung kami ini untuk bisa hidup, bertahan hidup lagi di tempat kampung kami ini.
It's one of the worst natural disasters of the 21st century. A tsunami that ravages coastal regions along the Indian Ocean. Aceh is hit the hardest. The wave destroyed everything, bringing down communications infrastructure, washing away roads, and collapsing medical institutions. International aid organizations struggle to get in. Countries are quick to grasp the scale of devastation. They realize a military response is critical. Military assets from 16 foreign governments are sent to aid Aceh. Some of the first teams to arrive are the Australians, New Zealanders, and Singaporeans. Operation Flying Eagle is the largest humanitarian relief effort the Singapore Armed Forces has ever mounted. The team deploys with such urgency that helicopter pilot Frank Yap has no time to notify his family. It was his 36th birthday.
So by the time I reached Medan around 7 or 8 p.m., I had a chance to call back home and inform my wife that I'm now in Medan and I won't be coming back. And then she broke to me that actually there is a surprise party at home and people are waiting for me to turn up. But I think they all understand that, when the duty calls, we just have to make it happen. I think at that moment, they were probably a bit sad that the effort for the surprise party wasn't being able to execute. But after, when they actually understand the whole dynamics and what actually are we doing there and how bad the situation is and how our effort contributed to the entire tsunami relief, I believe they accepted and they were pretty much proud that actually, indirectly, they also supported the whole tsunami relief mission.
December 27th, the day after, at approximately 0900 hours. Frank makes his first approach to Malabo, one of the worst hit places in Aceh.
Once we reached the Ark and we hit down to the western coast, it was totally disastrous. We can't see any houses anymore along the coast. What you can see are broken bridges, flat piece of land where there is no signs of buildings except the mosque, which is actually built on concrete. So that's the only place. And big antenna or telephone towers crumpled like just toothpicks and stuff. So the impact was really, really bad.
Throughout the whole journey down, you could see the whole place just inundated, destroyed by the earthquake and waterlogged because of the tsunami. And that scar was just really quite jarring and really not seeing any lives at all as you're flying in. And that was, it's quite unreal. Even as you think about it, the scale and the magnitude of it is just mind-boggling.
Tan Chuan Jin is commander of operations in Malabo. Deployed with him are ships, helicopters, transport aircraft, and more than 1,000 troops, all to assist with the humanitarian operation.
Well, clearly we all knew that we were doing something really important because as a good friend and neighbor, you can't just stand by and not reach out to help. And I think everyone knew that, everyone was motivated. But at the same time, it was also important for people to not just intellectually know that, but to also emotionally realize the full magnitude of what they are doing and what our friends had gone through. So we made it a point to rotate everyone, to make sure that everyone at least had one opportunity to go down the ground, whether at the refugee center, whether at the medical outpost that we had, or in whatever shape and form, to play a very direct role in reaching out to the locals there. Sometimes we take things for granted, and it's to remind them how precious life can be, and that no matter how insignificant it may seem, we all can make a real difference to the lives of others.
Girhan Lantara led relief efforts for the Indonesian army in Malabo. He was caught in the tsunami and in its aftermath. He mobilized surviving troops for relief operations. They were alone on the ground, supporting survivors as best they could until help arrived.
Saya merasa kami tidak sendiri. Itu yang terjadi. Setelah itu ya sudah lancar. Tiap malam seluruh instansi saya panggil. Pada briefing itu saya panggil semua untuk mereka mengkomunikasikan sesuai dengan jalur koordinasi mereka ke pusatnya. Tiap malam mereka, semua unsur masuk briefing. Saya brief, hari ini kita sudah melaksanakan ini, logistik kita sekian, yang belum terjangkau ini hal-hal yang harus diperbaiki.
It was a mammoth task. Teams had to clear rubble, recover bodies, and try to return to a sense of normalcy.
Jadi hari ke-7 lampu sudah normal, kemudian beberapa hari kemudian listrik sudah masuk, beberapa hari kemudian bensin sudah bisa masuk juga dari Pertamina. Tidak berapa lama kita bisa menangani tanggap darurat untuk itu. Ya memang pencarian mayat terus kita lakukan. Karena itu sampai beberapa bulan masih ketemu saja 1, 2, 3, 4 mayat itu ketemu. Walaupun dia tinggal kepingan-kepingan tubuh.
Dia sendiri yang bilang, dia bilang anaknya, mamanya sudah tenggelam. Rumah tuh memang rumah tuh sudah nggak ada lagi, sudah habis rata. Sedang kita nih merawat anak ini sakit kan, jadi kita kan belum bisa mesti mikirkan untuk anak dulu.
The scale of the disaster was difficult to fathom. In a sign of solidarity, leaders of the world came together. Less than a week after the tsunami, Singapore's then Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong flew to Aceh in a show of support for the Republic's neighbor.
First, we have to deal with the relief. Make sure people have shelter, have food, have water, that their wounds are treated, that if they're sick, they are able to see their doctor. After that, then we can think about reconstruction, about clearing the towns, and about getting the economies reconstructed again.
The people going back, it's an extremely strong spirit. I mean, they're attached to their land, attached to their homes. I would say they've gone through a terrific tragedy, and I would say they're superb in what they're doing, way beyond what I would expect.
One of the most immediate and heartbreaking tasks was managing the overwhelming number of casualties. In Aceh, several mass graves were dug to accommodate the burial of bodies that could not be identified.
Sebanyak 2.500 jenazah yang dapat kita selesaikan dalam waktu 24 jam.
Dr. Edwin Lau knows this ship, the Endurance, well. 20 years ago, he set sail for Aceh on it with a team of 21 medical staff, including civilian volunteers.
We didn't know what the state of the medical infrastructure that was remaining. So we decided up front to provide not just the primary care support as well as the public health support. We also wanted to provide surgical support. So that meant bringing our rapidly deployable operating theatre, and that's not an easy feat. It was a strange environment for them, not the normal hospital environment. It was culturally different for them, and it was something that they had to adapt to very quickly. They really had to work tirelessly around the clock just to provide the medical support.
To help medical workers and the rest of the relief team reach disaster-stricken communities, the Singapore Army's combat engineers had to first clear debris from the beaches to allow troops and vehicles to deliver urgently needed supplies and services.
The other challenge was the maintenance of these landing beach sites. At the same time, we were also creating the road network to facilitate the logistical movement and clearing the helicopter landing point for helicopters, especially for the larger Chinooks, to bringing more relief goods via the air. So as you can see, we were operating on numerous tasks concurrently with limited equipment and manpower resources. And time was extremely crucial. We had to establish accessibility as fast as we could so that we can reach out to those in need in the shortest time.
I think for the engineers, we have achieved a lot because we're able to create a sort of ceiling for us to project equipment up to land. And now after that, we are trying to sort of improve on it to have more equipment to come out. So beside that, we are also trying to clear all the debris around to help which was requested by the Indonesian engineers. So I think we have achieved quite a lot of stuff.
One of the things was, I recall working together with the Indonesian teams that were still in place, and also many other Indonesian teams that were mobilized from all over Indonesia to come and help in this situation. And besides that, we had multiple NGOs as well as other military like the Indian and the American navies that were working with us. So it was quite a large and huge operation and very complex.
It's really treating and working with our friends and neighbors with respect. And I think importantly, to always treat people with dignity. Bearing in mind what the people had gone through, many of the people have lost loved ones. They've lost their homes, they've lost documents, things which we sometimes take for granted. Those things are digitized, but your title deeds, your house, the photographs of your families, these things are of immeasurable importance to them, and especially the loss of loved ones. So it was always about working and with them closely, treating people with dignity and respect, and to be compassionate. And we were very particular, even micromanaging, it would seem, telling our guys that do not wear sunglasses when you work with our friends on the ground because you wanted to have eye contact.
Despite the difficult circumstances, relationships were forged. Hari Raya Haji was celebrated a month after the tsunami. For many, there was little to celebrate, but the Singaporean soldiers chipped in to offer a little festive spirit.
We are approaching Hari Raya Haji at that time. It was a good initiative that we brought upon to us, and we thought of donating cows to the affected villages. And we brought in the cows, and then we give it to them. It is not so much of giving them the cow. it is so much that built a bond within the village. On the day of the Hari Raya Haji itself, we wait, very a bit emotional because the memories flashback. So on the day of the Hari Raya Haji, remember that all the Muslim soldiers So on the very day of the on the Hari Raya Haji itself, all the Muslim soldiers, alongside with the villagers and the Indonesian Armed Forces, we had a mass prayer together, and then subsequently we moved to the mass burial ground to have a prayer for the fallen, and that actually gives a picture of a feeling of a solidarity that the SAF or the Singaporean there are there for them in facing their hardship. This operation is not just about only helping people, but actually it helps to maintain the good relationship between the two countries, especially with the Indonesian military.
While relief efforts took place on the ground, diplomatic efforts pressed on behind the scenes. The urgency was palpable. Diplomat Ong Keng Yong was tasked with roping together ASEAN members to help affected countries.
What surprised me as a result of the news on the tsunami was that everybody in all the ASEAN capital cities came back and said, yes, their leader will be ready to have a meeting. Just settle the date and time, and then we will take it from there. What surprised me was the immediate political instinct in all the leaders. Yeah, wow, this is something that we cannot afford to dilly-dally, and let's get on with it.
On January 6, 2005, ASEAN convened an emergency meeting in Jakarta, where former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's opening statement highlighted the unprecedented scale of devastation and the need for collective global action.
Scattered among the countless tragic stories are heroic tales of survival and also of selfless sacrifice for others. They speak of our shared humanity without regard to race, nationality, or religion. And now, after the disaster, the survivors are picking themselves up, tackling the urgent problems, rebuilding their lives and communities. And the global community must help them to do so.
The good thing at that time, honestly, was there was a very strong political impetus. This was really the impressive part about the whole period that we encountered. It was actually the optimum, in my opinion, of ASEAN camaraderie and solidarity. Till that time, I had not seen it before like that. So, yeah, now we always use that as a benchmark.
Aceh is home to more than 40,000 fishermen and their families. 2/3 of the fishermen in the capital were killed in the tsunami. 70% of the small-scale fishing fleet was destroyed. The industry was decimated. Before the tsunami and her political career, Susi Pujastuti ran a seafood distribution business.
So we want to work for the high-quality seafood, which is fresh or live, from the fisherman village to the market directly. And the only thing to do possible in Indonesia, if you have an aircraft.
Because Susi had 2 small planes at her disposal, She was one of the first responders when the tsunami struck. With Aceh's airports heavily damaged, these small planes, requiring minimal space to land, suddenly became critical lifelines.
Basically, the runway was only 450 meters left. We land there, we met the army who is there, and we see what they need, and we have some water and everything we can give to the people.
Her planes flew back and forth, ferrying much-needed food, tents, and medical supplies.
For me, it's so many impressions come. Seeing the soldiers there had been 3-4 days with red eyes and not enough food, and eating the first time rice, nasi padang, is also another impression that I will never forget. And that's built a lot of friendship.
From these early missions, Susi's planes continued serving extremely remote communities across the archipelago, providing support in times of need.
That's why I always keep reminding everybody who manage Susi Air to continue if there is any earthquake or tsunami disaster. Susi Air has to be the earliest possible to help. So anywhere in Indonesia, we can always depart at the longest 3 hours to the destination where the disaster is happening. So Tsunami Aceh was for me is also not only humanity experience, but it's a life lessons of sharing. I'm tired every evening, but there's nothing better feeling that you can do something.
Kita ini sekarang berada di kuburan massal, salah satu kuburan massal besar di Banda Aceh, tepatnya di Ulele. Di sini rumah sakit Meraksa, dan di sebelahnya itu sekolah. Delisa dulu dan ibu juga mengajar di sana.
Delisa lost her mother and sister to the tsunami. Their bodies were never found. She believes this is where they are.
Jadi kalau 26 Desember itu banyak yang datang kemari orang Aceh. Jadi kita sebagian berdoa di jalan ini. Nah kalau untuk Delisa sendiri, Delisa suka di dekat batu itu. Batu yang ini. Delisa sering berdoa di situ. Entah kenapa hanya memiliki feeling saja. Kenapa Allah itu masih menyisakan Delisa di antara keluarga Delisa yang sudah tiada? Mungkin Allah itu mau Delisa mendoakan mereka. Itu disisakanlah saya satu untuk mendoakan mereka dan korban yang lain. Itu satu. Kedua, Delisa berpikir gini, oh Allah menyelamatkan Delisa untuk coba sharing ke yang lain. Seperti apa? Oh ini kondisi saya seperti ini loh, saya masih bisa seperti ini loh. Yuk kita bersyukur yuk dengan keadaan kita.
This is one of 2 mass graves in Aceh. 14,000 people were buried here. The deceased, who were not or could not be identified.
Kalau harapan Delisa masih sampai dengan saat ini ingin ketemu dengan ibu kandung Delisa. Karena kami tidak pernah bertemu melalui mimpi, nggak pernah ketemu. Tidak pernah dimimpikan. Kalau kakak dan abang itu bapak ada, tapi kalau ibu nggak ada. Jadi masih memiliki harapan, ya mungkin nihil ya setelah 20 tahun, tapi kalau kuasa Allah, inginnya ketemu sama ibu itu harapan terbesar.
Faith has been what's helped the people of Aceh overcome these traumatic events.
Situasi yang religius di Aceh juga banyak membantu bagaimana orang-orang untuk merilis traumanya. karena mereka percaya ini takdir, mereka percaya bahwa ini adalah ketentuan dari Tuhan, sehingga mereka bisa lebih menerima situasi dan deal dengan trauma-trauma masa konflik, trauma-trauma ketika terjadi gempa bumi dan tsunami. Memang kita bisa melihat religiusnya orang Aceh itu membantu dalam proses trauma healing.
Over the past 2 decades, the enduring pain of loss has haunted the survivors of the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, even as humanitarian aid has transformed the region. Today, Aceh is renewed, with homes, roads, and mosques rebuilt, but this time with stronger foundations. The resilience of the Achenese is a testament to the human spirit, reminding us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope and community can pave the way for healing.